Okay, good morning everyone and welcome to our October Government Affairs Forum. It's a great way to kick off the fall season with a very special guest speaker, Mayor Martin J. Walsh of the City of Boston. Mayor Walsh has made his annual forum with the Chamber of Commerce and our members one of the highlight events of the year, and we are very thankful for that. Thank you, Mayor Walsh, for making the time to join us today. I'll be recognizing several members of the mayor's team in just a minute, but I do want to recognize his most important partner, Lori Higgins. Lori, thank you for joining us today. And Mayor Walsh, we're very grateful for the partnership and relationship that you've demonstrated with the business community over your term as mayor, and the commitment to keeping the communications lines open and the collaboration in place on very important issues like education, climate readiness, transportation, issues of race and economic opportunity, and so much more. And we look forward to continuing that partnership, and I'm sure we'll hear some updates on some of those issues in just a few minutes. I'd like to welcome a few other guests that have joined us this morning. Chairperson of the House Ways and Means Committee, Representative Aaron Michaelwitz, is here. Chairperson of the Joint Committee on Transportation, Senator Joseph Boncour, is here today. And Representative Adrian Madero has joined us as well. And please give a nice Boston welcome to another mayor, Mayor Dan Rivera of the City of Lawrence. We have a couple of city councilors in the room with us today. Joining us, Boston City Councilor from District 2, Ed Flynn. Boston City Councilor from District 7, Kim Janey, and two at-large Boston City Councilors, Michael Flaherty and my neighbor, at-large Councilor Anissa Asabi-George. I do also want to welcome the many senior members of the Mayor's Cabinet that are here today. I know they're seated over to my left, maybe. Could you all please stand and be recognized? Thank you for the job that you do every day. I do want to give a special recognition to a couple of people that the Chamber works closely with. Chief of Economic Development, John Barrows. John, thank you for being here and your continued partnership. The Executive Director of the BPDA, Brian Golden, thank you for your leadership. And I always have to welcome the Mayor's Chief of Staff, Dave Sweeney. There's a special fraternity among Chiefs of Staff. Dave, thank you for being here. And please give a Boston welcome to the new Superintendent of Boston Public Schools, Dr. Brenda Cassellius. And we're also pleased to have in the audience today, first time in her new role as CEO of the Massachusetts Port Authority, Lisa Wieland. A couple of commercial messages before we get to the main event. On November 7th, our next Government Affairs Forum will feature State Treasurer Deb Goldberg. Before that, on November 4th, we will host our annual Our Convention for the Next Generation, the largest gathering of young professionals in the region. The event will feature workshops and sessions focused on leadership development, civic engagement, and financial literacy. In addition, we will be recognizing our 10 outstanding young leaders at our convention this year, the most prestigious and coveted award for young leaders in Greater Boston. Among the previous winners of this award is John F. Kennedy. So this is an event that really has a long history here in Boston. please think about this event and consider sending some of the young professionals in your organization or perhaps a rising star in your office to this exceptional program, which will be held at the Edward M. Kennedy Institute on November 4th. And lastly, November 17th through 19th, we invite you or a member of your team to join us on a trip to Los Angeles, California for our annual city-to-city discovery trip. As the second most populous city in the United States, Los Angeles is the cultural, financial, and commercial center of Southern California and the West. Don't miss this opportunity to connect with other Boston leaders and to learn from our peers in Los Angeles. You can learn more about this and all of the programs of the Boston Chamber at boston.com. We're almost ready to welcome Mayor Walsh, but before we do, a few important thank yous. Thank you to our friends at Comcast, who helped make this government affairs program available to a wider audience through their live stream on necn.com and through their on-demand services. And thank you to our long-standing government affairs partner, Bank of America. Thank you to Miceal, Chamberlain, the whole B of A team for your support of this program, but also of the work of the Greater Boston Chamber of Commerce on many issues facing the business community. With that, I'm pleased to turn the podium over to Miceal Chamberlain, Massachusetts President, Bank of America, to formally introduce our speaker.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Jim, for the kind introduction, and good morning, everyone. On behalf of our 5,000 employees here in Massachusetts, Bank of America remains thrilled to be partnering with the Chamber for the Government Affairs Forum Series. And today I'm pleased to have the honor of introducing our special guest, our city's mayor, Mayor Martin J. Walsh. Mayor Walsh's vision is of a thriving, healthy, and innovative Boston, a city with equality and opportunity for all, where revolutionary history inspires creative solutions to the challenges of the 21st century. Now in his second term as mayor, Mayor Walsh has focused on strengthening Boston schools and has led Boston to the forefront of the global innovation economy by attracting industry-leading private sector employers, upgrading the city's digital infrastructure, and using technology to transform government services. At the same time, the mayor has led important conversations on economic opportunity and created powerful tools to help create more of it, including a robust education, economic inclusion and equity agenda, an apprenticeship program, and an Office of Financial Empowerment. He also issued the first ever workforce report examining diversity in city government, which provides a benchmark for his efforts to diversify Boston's municipal workforce. And he's the founding vice chair of the Cities of Opportunity Task Force at the U.S. Conference of Mayors, elevating the national conversation on economic inequality. Before taking office, Mayor Walsh served in the Massachusetts House of Representatives, where he was a leader on job creation and workforce protections, substance abuse, mental health and homelessness, K-12 education, and civil rights, as well as playing a key role in defending Massachusetts' pioneering stand on marriage equality. We are thankful for his ongoing support of and partnership with the Greater Boston business community, and we're extremely thankful that he takes the time out of his busy schedule to be with us to address the Chamber crowd each and every year. Without further ado, please welcome Martin J. Walsh.
Thank you, Miceal, and thank you for that nice introduction. To Jim and to everyone for coming this morning, thank you for being here at the Chamber. I want to also thank the members of the Boston City Council that are with us today and members of the legislature. Before I get into the heart of my remarks, I just want to update you on the plans that I introduced here last year, Resilient Boston Harbor. The plan invests in our open space on the waterfront, creating better parks and protecting our neighborhoods from flooding. The progress we've made in just 1 year is pretty incredible. We opened Martins Park, a playground that adds resilience to the Four-Point Channel, a key entry point of floodwaters into the Four-Point Channel. Langone and Popolo Park is under construction and will increase resilience in the North End, the West End, and downtown Boston. Moakley Park redesign is moving forward and will help protect the South Boston, Dorchester, Roxbury, and the South End neighborhoods. In Boston, our shoreline is definitely getting stronger, and it's just the start. In July, we passed Boston's first capital plan that dedicates 10% of all spending to resilient projects. We're going to do that every year as an investment to our people, our communities, and all of our businesses. We're acting locally and leading globally here in Boston. Tonight, I head to Copenhagen, Denmark for the C40 Climate Summit. C40 is a network of the world's largest cities working together to slow climate change. I serve as a North American co-chair along with Mayor Eric Garcetti of Los Angeles. I'll bring with me a brand new update to our climate action plan that many of you in this room helped us put together. It lays out the steps Boston will take to be carbon-free by the year 2050. The goal is necessary and attainable. Our work so far has reduced Boston's total emissions by 21%. Our leadership has been recognized. In this summer, we were named the #1 most energy-efficient city in the United States for the 4th consecutive year. It's a credit to both the policies we put in place and the investment building owners are making in Boston's future. We're leading on issues of local, state, and national and global significance. And our efforts are transforming Boston. For the first time in a generation, we're investing in comprehensive upgrades to Boston's signature parks, Boston Common and Franklin Park. For the first time in 25 years, we're building new high schools. They are state-of-the-art in STEM education, arts education, and more. For the first time in 30 years, we're building a completely new firehouse, Engine 42 in Roxbury. For the first time in nearly 40 years, we'll host the NAACP National Convention next summer right here in the city of Boston. We are changing our city's image and reality. For the first time in over 50 years, we're moving forward with a complete redesign of City Hall Plaza. And for the first time ever, Boston has earned a perfect AAA bond rating for 6 consecutive years. We have all moved Boston into a new era. We opened up our city government and welcomed new voices to the table. We set ambitious goals, built new systems and strategies to meet them. And we led with our values of inclusion, equity, and compassion. Our policy innovations are being taken up by cities and states across this country in women's advancement, immigrant advancement, workforce development, senior supports, disability access, veteran services, racial equity, recovery services, and housing the homeless. We do this work in partnership with our residents, with nonprofits, with the business community. As a result, our economy is thriving. Unemployment is below 3%. Our established industries are growing. And we were recently named the 5th best city in the world for startups. Together, we've made Boston the safest, the healthiest, the busiest, the most employed, and the most productive it's ever been. And the benefits of this progress has been felt in every neighborhood in our city. But the question I have today is, what will we do with this opportunity? It's not an opportunity that was given to us. It was one we earned. But we can't take it for granted because as far as we've come, big challenges still remain. Some are challenges of success, like housing demand and transit capacity. Some are national problems like inequality and the hollowing out of the middle class. All of them are threats to our economy and to each of the businesses and organizations that are represented in this room today. We have the opportunity now, by building on our success, to address them. So today, I'm going to talk about housing, transportation, and education. I could start with data, but I spend most of my time out in the neighborhoods of Boston. And here's what people are saying to me. I talked to a 30-year-old city employee who's 8 years into a good career, just got married, and they're thinking about a family. But he looked at the housing market and is losing hope of ever being able to afford a home in the city. I met a mother in Mattapan who spends 2 hours of her day, every day, taking multiple buses to and get from a job in the Longwood medical area. She's working hard for her family, but she's forced to rely on a transit system that isn't working for her. I talk to parents who say their family's future depends on which high school their child has access to. And I hear from young adults who grew up in our city, overcame obstacles, did everything we asked them to do, but they can't get a foot in the door at a Boston company. These aren't marginal examples. These are people at the heart and soul of our economy and our community. They're from all races in every neighborhood. They're working in City Hall and in all of your offices. They're our middle class and those fighting to be in our middle class. Meeting their challenges is my agenda, but it must be our agenda. Because a city that can't house its workforce is a city where employers lose talent. A state that can't move its workforce is a state with an expiration date on its economic leadership. And a country losing its middle class is a country that's losing its soul. So today, I want to do something different, as I did last year. Today, I come before you with an appeal. It's an appeal to every industry, organization, individual in a position of leadership in our city to focus on our energies, strengthen our partnerships, and combine our voices to meet those shared challenges. It's a call to action to show our young workers, our longtime residents, and our newest Bostonians, people from every neighborhood and every walk of life, that this great city we've built wasn't built for someone else. It was built for them and for everyone. That's what our values demand of us. And that's what our future depends on. It will define the kind of government we get. It will define the fate of every business and nonprofit in our city. It will define our ability to compete on a global stage. The actions we take now on housing, transit, and schools will define Boston for the next 10 years and the next generation. Let's start with housing. When I took office, Boston faced a housing crisis. So we brought the stakeholders to the table and we created a plan to address it. We turned 3 million square feet of city land into nearly 500 first-time home ownership opportunities and over 1,100 rental units. We increased inclusionary development and linkage collections. And I'd like to thank the members of the business community who partnered with us. We modernized planning and opened up new areas for trans-oriented development. This summer, we dedicated nearly $4 million of the community preservation funding to a new low-interest mortgage program for first-time home buyers. The net result is we've created over 31,000 new homes in our city. And we have an additional 27,000 units in the pipeline. We're ahead of pace to meet our housing goal of 69,000 units by the year 2030. 20% of those new homes are subsidized units. We are #1 in the United States for income-restricted affordable housing. I want to repeat that again. We are #1 in the United States for income-restricted affordable housing. Our strategy is working. Rents have stabilized in some neighborhoods, and we're on the way to creating 1,000 new homeowners this year. But there's much more work that needs to be done. I talked about situations facing young professionals in City Hall. I hear the same stories from talented young people in businesses that I visit. I'm 30 and I still have roommates. My rent's so high I can't save for a down payment. I want to stay in Boston, but I can't afford to live here. These are people with good paying jobs. The situation facing the workforce and senior citizens, if they can't get subsidized housing, is even tougher. Market rent and home prices are simply beyond most people's reach. And people are being forced out of our city. And it's not fair, it's not sustainable, and it's not good for our economy. So here's what we need to do. We need to create more middle-income housing. We need to stop displacements, and we need everyone to play their part. It isn't just a Boston problem. We have a regional housing shortage, decades in the making. So we need more production across our region. Working with the Metro Mayor's Coalition, we developed a regional plan. Now cities and towns need to set their own housing goals to work to meet them the way Boston has done. But when I talk to my fellow mayors and town managers, they tell me about good housing proposals with majority support that are being constantly blocked. So I'm asking for your support today for the Governor's Housing Choice Bill. It changes local approval from a 2/3 vote to a simple Democratic majority. It's a simple fix with positive results for your workforce. It needs all of our support. Second, we need developers to build middle-income housing. We've built luxury apartments, condominiums, and townhouses. That fills a need and takes pressure off older housing stock in Boston. We're also building and preserving record amounts of low-income housing. We'll continue to protect the most vulnerable families and seniors. But what's missing is the middle. And the people who fall through the gaps are the people in our stores, our offices, our restaurants, whose hard work makes our economy tick. I understand that investors want to maximize their profit. But there has to be a balance between profit and impact. Our communities need middle-class housing. Our workforce needs middle-class housing. And we stand ready to partner with anyone who will step forward to help us address this need. Lastly, pushing people out of their homes and their communities has to stop. This summer, my office got a call from a 77-year-old man. After living in a safe home in the Fenway for over 40 years, he got an eviction notice, no cause given. He's not alone. We're getting these calls all the time, from seniors with nowhere to turn, from single mothers facing rent increases so aggressive it might well be an eviction notice. We created the Office of Housing Stability to tackle this crisis. It's working with people to help them stay in their homes, sometimes the only homes they've ever known. But we need stronger tools. We need the legislature to pass our bill protecting seniors and guaranteeing a right to counsel for tenants facing eviction. We also need owners and investors to take a step back and consider the human impacts of their actions. Profits can't come at this kind of cost. It's not a price and it's not a practice that we're going to accept in the city of Boston. The bottom line is, housing's not a commodity, it's a community. It's where people build their lives. We have to be able to provide security and stability in our communities. And we have to be able to house our workforce. That's why employers have an essential role to play in developing solutions. And we're going to continue this conversation with the business community. I'm going to work with Jim Rooney to bring members of the Chamber together with my housing team. We're going to identify opportunities to create housing. And I invite everyone to bring your input, your ideas, and your resources to the table. Transportation is also a critical part of the solution. A reliable, frequent, and affordable regional rail system would expand housing and job options for commuters. It would reduce traffic congestion, and it would cut carbon emissions. It would unlock new levels of productivity in our economy. As you know, Boston doesn't control the MBTA. It's a state-managed system. But we are the largest payer into that system. And we've done more than ever to improve public transit in our city. We've done it by listening to our residents' needs and new ideas, developing a comprehensive plan, and making hard decisions to raise revenue to implement them. We built Boston's first bus lanes in a generation in Rosendale and Allston, and now in the North End in Charlestown. Tens of thousands of people have had their commutes improved by these bus lanes, and we're working on more. We've installed a new transit team that's working with the T right now on improvements in Mattapan, South Boston, and Roxbury. We've invested $5 million in T-passes for our youth. Excuse me, $6.5 million in T-passes for our youth. We called on the T to protect seniors from fare increases and provide late-night bus service for third-shift workers, and they're doing all those things. Yesterday, I testified at the MBTA's control board on our plans to increase the Fairmont Line service and the commuter rail frequency all across Greater Boston. We're going to keep growing and building these collaborations, but there's a bigger picture that we have to address. Our residents, workers, and customers don't just move inside of Boston's borders. Transportation is a regional and statewide system, so the challenge can be met with a regional statewide plan that puts public transit at the center. In Boston, we see it and we experience it every single day. Our worst congestion is at the points where people are trying to get on and off the highways that connect our city to the region. Many of those drivers want and would use better transit options. Our workforce is speaking loud and clear. A recent survey by the Mass Biotech Council found that 60% of life science workers would change jobs tomorrow if they could get a better commute. That figure more than doubled in 3 years. We appreciate the $8 billion investment over 5 years that the state is making in the T. Getting closer to a state of good repair is necessary, but it's not enough. A state of good repair means bringing the Red Line back to the quality of system that it was when I rode it to high school as a teenager in the 1980s. Our population has grown by over 100,000 people since then. We need a plan for the 21st century to meet the needs and support of tomorrow's growth. Recently, I sat with a group of business leaders in my office. They told me some of their employees have given up on public transit. They can no longer start meetings before 10 a.m., and that they have to add shifts to make up for the transit delays. I think we all understand the urgency. We need your voices to communicate what's at stake for your workers, your businesses, and our economy. And we also need your expertise to help us develop solutions. Just as we've done in the city, we need to work together as partners on a comprehensive plan to address the statewide need for better transportation. And we need to make hard decisions necessary to fund and implement this plan. The final challenge I want to address today is education. Our goal in Boston is to give every child access to high-quality schools from pre-kindergarten through high school and beyond. That's why we've made historic investments in our schools, growing the Boston Public Schools budget to nearly $1.2 billion. And we carefully targeted those investments to proven strategies for closing the achievement gap. We funded longer school days. We're committed to having pre-kindergarten seats for every 4-year-old in Boston. We're giving every 5-year-old a college savings account. We've expanded summer learning to 14,000 students. We created a facilities program from scratch. And after decades of neglect, we're replacing roofs, windows, boilers, and furniture. We're providing the technology that many of our students don't have access to at home. We're building new high schools designed for 21st century education. We're also looking at the whole student and knocking down barriers to learning wherever we find them. That means installing dozens of new kitchens to provide healthy food that many of our children aren't getting at home. It's why we're giving free tea passes to students in 7th through 12th grade and free hygiene products to girls. It's why we're adding nurses to every school, mental health professionals to respond to trauma, and housing supports for students experiencing homelessness. All of these investments, with the hard work of our teachers, school leaders, and students, are paying off. By almost any objective measure, the Boston Public Schools continue to improve. Today, more Boston students than ever before are in high-quality schools. On the most recent MCAS results, 2/3 of Boston Public Schools showed improvement. The state determined that our district as a whole is making substantial progress. but we still have a long way to go. We need every school to be making progress because we can never be satisfied as long as achievement gaps remain. I want everyone in this conversation to understand two very important things about our schools. First, we are graduating an incredible number of bright, talented, diverse, ambitious students. I am, and we should be proud of our students. Second, there is much more potential in our schools waiting to be unlocked, but profound challenges stand in the way. More than half of the students attending BPS schools live in poverty. 4,500 BPS students are experiencing homelessness. That's 8% of the children in our schools. 1/3 of all the students are still learning English. Put together, if you take all the highest need students in Massachusetts, 6 million people, the Boston Public School educates 43% of those students. Our students need and deserve unique levels of support and innovation. That's why we're working to provide it. That's why we fought so hard for a state education funding bill that would recognize these realities. I would like to thank the Speaker, the Senate President, the Education Committee chairs, our Boston delegation for the work that they have done in this legislation. It has key principles we fought for to meet the needs facing every district and every student in the Commonwealth. It's important this legislation passes and its commitments get fully funded. But it doesn't end there. Our new superintendent, you already met her, Dr. Brenda Casilius, hit the ground running. She's visiting every single school in the district. She's working with the school committee on plans to reform the central office and upgrade curriculum and better support students in the classroom. What our kids ultimately need is what students in many other districts take for granted: a stable network of support and opportunities surrounding them at home, at school, all year round. Too many of our students don't have that. But you can help provide it. We've seen the difference the business community can make. Natixis helped the Winthrop Elementary School in Dorchester rise from the bottom to the top of the state accountability system. Vertec built a learning lab that serves students from 15 BPS schools and provides teachers with high-quality STEM curriculum. The Venture Cafe Foundation provides student workshops in technology and design and entrepreneurship in Roxbury. And Autodesk provides unique professional development experience for teachers at 13 innovative companies in our city. When a company makes a commitment to our schools, good things happen. Our students are lifted up. Your team grows its sense of purpose. Our city gets more connected, and our future gets stronger. So I'm asking again everyone in the business community to become more of an active partner in our schools. You can build that community of supporting our young people that they need. You can help us close the achievement gap. You can strengthen and guide our future workforce. That brings me to my final request. I'm asking Boston's employers to draw from the deep well of talent in our neighborhoods. I'm asking you to hire more kids from Boston, more people from Boston. Our residents are skilled, resilient, diverse, and they have a lived understanding of culture and community in today's America. You need people like them in your workforce, and you don't have to look far to find them. I want to share a couple examples. Kaya Walters is a first-generation American who went to the Boston Public Schools and studied at UMass Boston. She has a passion for community and a knack for building websites. Raymond Ortega grew up in Southie. He graduated from Charlestown High, and he recently wrapped up 5 years in the United States Marine Corps, where he worked on airplane technology. Kaya and Raymond graduated this year from Resilient Coders Boot Camp. It's a program we partner with that helps diverse young people elevate their skills and work with local companies to hire them. Now they're both professional software engineers, making their companies and our city stronger. They're here with us today. I want to thank you both. They clearly didn't want to stand up, so thank you. My message today is clear. We've worked together to create an environment in our city where businesses can thrive and communities can thrive. Boston is strong as it's ever been. But if we're going to continue to thrive, if we're going to continue to meet our greatest challenges and build an even stronger future, then we have to do more. To keep our economy working, we must provide what working people need in housing, in transit, at schools, and in jobs. We have to give every single person a place to live and a path towards their dream. To do that, we need to be focused not just on the short term and the bottom line, but on the long term and the greater good. Recently, the CEOs of nearly 200 of America's biggest companies published a statement redefining the purpose of a corporation to include supporting the communities in which we work. I'm confident that's how we do business in Boston. It's a big reason for our success. But it's time to redouble our efforts. And this is my call to action. I need partnerships now more than ever to confront challenges in housing, in transportation, education, so we can have a strong middle class, an economy that's built to last, and a Boston that continues to lead in the 21st century. I want to thank you all for being here this morning. God bless you, and I look forward to continuing our conversation. Okay. What question you asking?
I'll start with the federal.
Should we talk about the BRA?
You want to talk about it? Okay, we have time for a few questions. Mayor, first of all, thank you for your focus and passion, quite frankly, on housing, transportation, and education, three issues that are critical to the Boston business community in terms of nurturing, attracting, and retaining a workforce for the 21st century here in Boston. So I don't know if I'm going to invite you back next year, though, because every year you seem to give me something to do. So anyway, at the risk of starting off maybe a little controversial, there's been some news lately about the BPDA and the work that it does and the growth of Boston and whether or not that organization needs to be looked at. How do you think about that?
Thank you, Jimmy, for that easy softball. Before I answer the question, I just want to recognize two other people in the room. Michael Conto, the chairman of the Boston School Committee. Thank you, Michael, for being here with us today. And I want to give a special shout out. They were mentioned kind of in a group, but I want to mention Joe Finn, the Commissioner of the Fire Department, and Chief Willie Gross, the Commissioner of the Boston Police Department. In 2013, when I ran for mayor, we looked at a bunch of different policy areas, and one of the areas we looked at was the BRA. And we felt at the time, as a candidate for mayor, and as a state representative prior to that, there wasn't enough planning going on. There was task force, but there wasn't enough planning going on in the BRA. When I became the mayor, we immediately called for a review internally. I appointed Brian Golden as the head of the BRA, and I did a review internally to see the inner workings of the BRA. And we found out that there was a lot of systems in there that had to be corrected and fixed. We also did a second dive into the BRA to see what type of agency we are and who do we want to be. Because what I felt was, what I heard a lot was people felt shut out. They felt shut out of the planning process. They couldn't get in. There was too many loops they had to jump over. And when we did that second review, what we realized is that the BRA, we weren't planning enough. And the intention of the BRA in the 50s was really to have an agency that approved projects, but also do some planning. So the first thing we did was rebrand the BRA, the Boston Planning and Development Agency. And after we did that, we got to work and looking at our planning department to see, are we really planning? Because we were building buildings all over the city, and we weren't really taking into account the traffic congestion that was happening around those buildings. We weren't taking into account the environmental impacts of those buildings. We weren't taking into account what we're doing. We're building kind of plopping buildings around, which was working at the time, those of you building them. but we realized that we needed to do more. And we came up with a process. And right now in the city of Boston, we have 16 planning processes going all over the city of Boston. We're planning in East Boston. We're planning in Charlestown. We're planning in South Boston. We're planning in Dorchester. We planned in Jamaica Plain. We're looking at different areas and different corridors around the city of Boston. And it's important for us to understand in the city, as I spoke about today, I think about the whole city. I think about the impacts of every move that we make. What I talked about today, and the reason for me talking about those three real issues today, is that they have real impacts on the future of our city. That if we don't get our transportation system right, it's going to hurt our companies. If we don't get our housing systems right, it's going to hurt our companies. If we don't have companies here in the city of Boston and aren't growing as a city, it's going to hurt the growth of the city of Boston. And the Boston Planning and Development Agency, led by Brian Gold and an incredible team, have done an amazing job of reforming a system that was working, but only working for a few. I would argue today that the BPDA is a system that's working for everybody because of the planning component of it. When we talk about planning, we're planning in areas we don't have developments. We're looking at the future growth of the city of Boston, and we want to make sure as the city grows, we protect the people and protect the neighborhoods. And that's exactly what the Boston Planning and Development Agency does today.
Well, thank you for addressing that, Mayor. I can speak from personal reflection that I think Boston's a pretty cool city, and it's no short order because the system we have through the BPDA works, and we can always do better. But you launching that citywide comprehensive planning process a couple of years ago that invited everyone to the table, including the business community, I think is just symbolic of that. So always room for improvement, but I think Boston's a pretty cool city. Other questions? I certainly have a few. I can ask another sort of softball question if you'd like. Up back in the middle of the room.
Good morning, Mayor. Andrea Howard from the West End House, and thank you, Mayor, for all the support that you give our young people. The Globe had an article about the development in Brighton that borders half of the parcel is in Brookline and half of the parcel is in Brighton, and how it highlighted the, zoning differences and how that contributes significantly to the housing crisis in Boston. And
Do me a favor, would you repeat the projects? I didn't hear it.
so there's a project on Quarry Road in Brighton. The Globe did an article that, for me, helped crystallize some of the issues that contribute to the housing crisis. So in Brighton, it's able to, it's got a 10-story multi-unit complex, whereas in Brookline, the only thing that could get approved were two-family homes. And I hadn't realized sort of the stark differences in zoning that enables that or prevents density from happening in some of our neighboring communities. And I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on how the call to action, today was around corporate responsibility, but sort of the personal responsibility for those folks that come into the city, reap the great benefits of being in a place like Boston, but head home to communities that significantly restrict density that could help ease the crisis that we're having in Boston.
I have two kind of answers to that. The first one is the Housing Choice Bill would allow cities and towns to be able to build more affordable homes and have a less of approval process. A lot of times communities are blocking it or hiding behind the fact that their government structure doesn't want to build affordable housing. The second is a call to action, calling out literally elect mayors and town managers around the Commonwealth to do more for affordable housing. We see it a lot in some of our bordering towns here in Boston. People want to build housing, but they don't necessarily want to build affordable housing. So we're going to constantly push that. The governor's been pushing that legislation and pushing more cities and towns to do more. Quite honestly, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but if you look at all the low-income housing being built in the Commonwealth, the supermajority that's being built in the city of Boston. And what's happening, people are coming to the city of Boston. Our list for the Housing Authority, I want to say, is 44,000 people looking to get into subsidized housing in the city of Boston. That list is made up of people all over the Commonwealth. So we really need to talk to other elected officials in other towns to do their part. That's not a unique story. That's not an isolated story. There are other projects where we border Boston and other places where we're putting 20%, 13 to 20% low-income housing on the piece of property, where the neighboring city and town for the same development is putting 10% or less.
Okay, well, maybe we'll throw one more softball at you. So, Mayor, you've achieved some national stature in the Conference of Mayors and other organizations. And I don't mean for this to be a political question, but over the years, the federal government has been a partner with cities on transportation, immigration, housing, education, but less so in recent years. How has that affected the job of running a major city, and what do you and your colleagues kind of talk about in terms of dealing with the federal government retreating from many of these issues?
This weekend I was at the U.S. Conference of Mayors in Michigan, the leadership meeting, and this is a topic we talk about every single time we get together: lack of national leadership. We happen to be, the main topic this week was gun reform and legislation. We focused on mass shootings, but I was explaining to the mayors there that in urban America, we have 1 or 2 or 3 mass shootings a year. They might happen sporadically throughout the year, but if you take the numbers at the end of the year, in the city of Boston to date, we've had 32 homicides. So for all intents and purposes, we've had 1 or 2 mass shootings in the city of Boston this year alone, but no one looks at it that way. So not having a national partner on passing legislation can hurt the cities and towns indirectly. Also, we don't have a national infrastructure policy for our roads and bridges and for our trains. So when you think about upgrading the MBTA or upgrading our roads and bridges, that's pretty much left to the state and the city to do on our own. We don't have a national housing policy. Our housing authority, Kate Bennett, the director of the BHA, is here. We're investing city dollars into reforming and building new units of housing for people that live in public housing, where the federal government is not a partner in that anymore. When you think about climate resiliency and climate change, we don't have a national policy. So when we think about what we want to do, we don't have a national policy there. So in some cases, it can be very frustrating, very difficult to lead a city without having a true federal partner. On the other side of the coin, it really is cities that lead America. Whether the president is this person or the last president, President Obama, all of the policies need to be carried out in the cities. Leadership in cities is extremely important to the future of America. And we talk about that a lot, because the policies that we're doing here today in Boston, when I give words to you and I throw out with the #1 energy efficient city in America, not everyone in the room is quite following that, but that's a big deal. We're a leader in energy efficiency. When I talk about Boston being the #1 city in America for income-restricted housing, that's a big deal. Those are big things, and those are ways we need to lead. I'm hoping that as this election progresses, we have a partner in the White House, because it makes a big difference. One example, President Obama's last days, they were doing a grant proposal for public housing. The city of Boston, the Whittier Street housing development, one of our older housing developments in Roxbury, won for a round of money the year before President Obama left. We didn't get chosen. The very last cycle, the advocates and the families in those housing units wrote letters and fought for it. President Obama granted Boston $30 million to redo the Whittier Housing Street development. If you drive by it today, you'll see the old buildings in the back that haven't been renovated yet, and you'll see the new buildings in the front knocked down and being built fresh from the start. The impacts of having a leader in the White House that cares about people where they live, how they get to work, their quality of life, makes a big difference. And right now we don't have that in Washington. But because we don't, in light of not having that, we're still leading the country here in the city of Boston. And I think it's important. And we're leading it because of a lot of you in this room, quite honestly. There's a lot of conversation about how development's bad for the city and how it's awful. When I went to the Conference of Mayors, about 80% of the cities in the room want to be Boston, because they understand the revenue that's being generated from real estate tax allows us to make investments in public housing, allows us to make investments in education, allows us to make investments in taking care of our homeless, allows us to make investments in taking care of people on addiction. So we're going to continue to grow our city. But through the efforts of the BPDA, we're also going to make sure we plan to protect our neighborhoods so people grow up in a neighborhood like I did in Dorchester and say, I'm proud of where I grew up. I'm proud of the street corner I hung on. I'm proud of where I grew up. That's how I grew up. We need to make sure that the next generation of young people get the same exact experience that I had and many of us in this room. Thank you.
Well, Mayor Walsh, we certainly have passionate leadership here in Boston in the person of Mayor Walsh. Thank you for leading with your soul, and thank you for addressing this Chamber of Commerce and appealing to the soul of the business community and supporting all of the policy issues that we're all dealing with together. Thank you all for coming this morning, and have a great day.